which corresponds to the film in the official section, Highrise. Please don't take photos during the press conference. We have with us, representing the film, the director of the film, Ben Wheatley, actors and actress Tom Kittleson, Sienna Miller and Luke Evans, and producer Jeremy Thomas. And they're eagerly awaiting your first question, so please, will the photographers please sit down so that we can get things organised. Front row, please. Hi, good morning. The question's for the director, Ben Wheatley. I would like to know, I understand that in 2011 there was a project of adapting the novel Highrise by Ballard, and it was going to be written by Richard Stanley and by Vincenzo Natali. Is it the same project? And how did it fall into your hands at the end of the day? And if it's a different project, how did you decide to adapt the novel to make the film? Thank you very much. Hope you got all that. Good.
Yeah, there was a. It's kind of more of a question for Jeremy. That, I mean, it's been the project has been in development for a long time, since basically from when the book was originally written in '75. So, and it's been through a lot of different pairs of hands, people trying to adapt it and get it to the screen. And but the version that we've made bears no relation, except for the book, to the other versions. So. It wasn't a case of like an evolving script that went through time and then it came to me and we changed it. It was a brand new script going straight back to the book. And in terms of how the adaptation was approached, it was that Amy Jump, who wrote the script, went to the book and used that primarily as the basis. So it was going back to it and looking at it within the period, rather than other approaches which have been to say where the book says it's set in the future, was to set it in a projected future from the point when the production was set up. This is a projected future from when the book was written.
Hi. I have a million questions, but I don't want to be here for a month. So for the director, didn't you think of adding some kind of context so people could understand what was happening around the building, why the people were there, something like that? Because I really wanted to know some of that stuff, and I was kind of frustrated about it. And for the actors, how come you ended up doing this? Because freaking crazy movies, it must be really, really weird to get that script and say, yeah, I'm going for it. I just, how do you get there?
In terms of the context, there's no context in the book. So we made a film of the book, and that was it. And I don't know, if you look at my other films, I'm not a massive fan of like exposition and stuff like that. And I don't think it would have helped. I mean, what would have been the explanation, like a zombie plague or a civil war or something, and it wouldn't have made any difference. So, we were being true to the book in that respect.
I don't think it's a difficult thing to say yes to this project. If you're a fan of Ballard and you're a fan of Ben's work, I think he's probably one of the most exciting filmmakers that we have in England, and I think any actor would really jump at the opportunity to work with him and Jeremy. And it's unique, original material, and that's always exciting.
Yeah, there was something incredibly brave about Ben and Amy's screenplay. I've been a huge fan of Ben since I first saw Kill List, and very much admire the writing of J.G. Ballard. And it's interesting, there aren't that many films like this being made in Britain. In fact, I think this is very rare, and so you jump at the chance to work in this way. It feels incredibly original and unique.
Following on from Sienna and Tom, all those things, plus for me the role was something I never usually get offered anything that extreme or dramatic, and in the context of the story, it was something I thought I could bring a lot to. And then knowing that somebody like Ben was helming it, I felt very confident that he'd bring the right things out and push me to my limits. And that's what he did, and it was a really enjoyable experience. I'm totally glad I did it.
Hola, bueno.
Hi, good morning. I would like to ask the actors and the actress, if they build a building like the one in the film, what would you put on the top floor and why?
Not Jeremy Irons' apartment, that's for sure.
No, and
More horses.
We'd put him down the bottom. More horses.
I don't know.
I don't really understand.
Yeah, I don't know.
What would you put on the top floor?
What in terms of what do I hold in esteem and or what do I want on the top of a flat?
Yeah, I suppose
A horse?
buildings that I've been to like that always, in my experience, tend to have very nice restaurants on top. So maybe a nice restaurant that's open to all the inhabitants of the building.
Yeah.
I'd say a ladder.
What would you sell in your restaurant? What kind of food? We are in San Sebastian after all.
I don't know.
Tapas.
Tapas, there you go. A tapas restaurant.
A tapas restaurant. Il Bulli. Local joke.
Dos preguntas para el director.
questions for the director. First of all, the film is closed. Why a quote by Thatcher? Could you explain what's that got to do with the film? That quote by Thatcher. And about Ballard, he wrote the book in the 1970s, and to what extent Ballard got ahead of the problems that we're facing nowadays?
I mean, the Thatcher quote for us was, it's basically showing the kind of the repetition of the situation, what's coming. You know, so you've got the Toby character who's going to grow up into basically a child of Thatcher. So it's basically what I liked about it was it made the film feel like it was part of a continuing story rather than just some people went crazy in a block of flats. It's more that it's an ongoing drama, and basically what you've got around the corner from that point is you've got Thatcher coming, but you've also got punk, and then it's sowing the seeds for all of our contemporary kind of situation as well. So that's why we use that. What's the other bit of the question? It was I can't remember now. There you go. That was it. Okay, cool. I can't remember the other bit.
Oh, sorry. Yes. See, Ballard got ahead of his time, ahead of the future. Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
totally. I mean, that's what's so brilliant about the Ballard books and Ballard in general, that he could predict. You read it, and then it comes true. And the more outrageous things he writes, the more that outrageously they come true. So, which is kind of terrifying when you look at some of the more extreme bits of his writing. And if that's coming down the road to us, then God help us, But yeah.
Hello. I have two questions. First one is, can you tell me something funny about the making of the movie? And the another one is that how you feel our culture, our country, and how you feel here.
Oh, what was the funny thing that happened? We had a lot of laughs making the film, but I don't think there was anything specifically that was, no one fell over and hit the head or something, or fell down a hole. I don't remember.
That's funny.
Yes, every day had a funny moment. I think we considering how dark some of those scenes were to shoot, and some of the subject matter was difficult to process. We had a very lovely, warm environment on set. We enjoyed it. I mean, it was funny for everybody else, I know, but not for me. Having to spend almost 20 days in covered in blood, which is not fun, with pieces of
it's so easy to write as well. You know, I imagine Amy just going, "Oh yeah, Wilder's covered in blood," like that. It's as easy as
she
that.
just wrote it in 2 seconds, not realizing how much pain that would have caused me. How many times I had to peel away my clothes after 16 hours of congealed blood all over my.
But you never complained.
I never complained. True professional.
I've got a funny when I jumped into the. Oh yes. I've got a funny thing. I had to do a scene where I had to dive into the swimming pool, but obviously, if you get wet every time you do it, you have to dry your hair and get redressed. So you can't do that 10 times or whatever it is. So they had me kind of pose to do a dive, but land on a crash mat, and supposed to sort of look elegant, look at him and be flirtatious and be like this, and then just like take off and land on a crash mat. That was pretty funny.
It was great.
We were still laughing about that months later, you know, when we were in the edit suite. We'd play it. If we were feeling a bit sad, we'd just play it backwards. Yeah, do you want to see Sienna land on that crash mat?
We were hoping for a reshoot just of that scene, so we could all come and visit that day.
There were a couple of surprises. At the end of the film, when Lang emerges from the swimming pool, Ben had instructed me to get out of the swimming pool as if I had survived the apocalypse. And so I crawled out of this swimming pool, and I found an aerosol can just lying there. But nobody had told me that it was actually a real aerosol can. So I just sprayed it in my mouth, and
what was in it?
It was
deodorant.
It was deodorant.
Yeah. And I was watching for the monitor, and I was talking to the set dresser and going, "Is that a real can of deodorant?" He's like, "Yeah." And we're just watching it happen, going, "He's going to spray it in his mouth now, isn't he?" And he did, yeah.
And then when Ben called cut, I just looked over to the monitors, and they were all giggling.
And then we did take 2, didn't we? Yeah, and he had to do it again.
Thinking I was an insane person.
Which you're not.
Which I may be. But it's the second part of the question. I love this film festival. I came here 4 years ago with The Deep Blue Sea, Terence Davis film, and my memories of it were very happy. And so when I found out that we were coming to San Sebastian with Highrise, it's honestly, I think it's a fantastic film festival. It's a beautiful city, and I've always felt very welcome here, and I'm extremely grateful for that.
Yeah, I am as well. And yesterday I did the tech test in the cinema and saw it for the first time, and it's an incredible space. So I was blown away. And you know, to have the film. You don't, you know, well, once it goes on theatrical release, it's like the cinemas are like 300-400 or 200, but it's a real honour and a treat to have the film shown in front of such a huge audience. And it was 1,700 seats here, and that's just brilliant.
Hello. Oh shit. One second. Hello.
I'd like to know, within how controversial your character is, the difficulty that it was, from my point of view, what was most difficult to play or portray in your character, and what was the easiest part, shall we say? How did you, give us your opinion on the character. What do you reckon?
Well, I guess, like I said earlier, the reason why I took it in the first place was because it was going to challenge me and challenge my abilities to portray someone who was very unlike me as a human being. I don't think there's much of him that, well, maybe there is, I don't know. Maybe there's parts of him that are like me. I remember when I first read the role, there was a few people that came to mind, real people, and the one was Oliver Reed, the actor Oliver Reed, who was, as we know, was a hellraiser on and off the screen. And so I sort of did a lot of research on him to build the character and create a persona, which seemed to work very well because we were also in the 70s. His look from the 70s worked very well, so we stole a lot from the look of Mr. Reed. The darker sides of Wilder were... Well, be truthful, they weren't easy to do. They were very hard scenes. The one that sticks out for me is the one between Sienna and myself, which was very, very hard. It was a hard day. We knew it was coming, and we knew it had to be done, and it was part of it was an important part of both of our journeys, but it was very difficult. And you just have to dig deep and just get on with it and hope that you've done what needs to be done. It was, everybody, even for Ben or anybody in the room, when those moments happen, it's very hard to watch it, to film it, to listen to it, and to act it. It was, I was glad. So were you when that day was over, weren't we, darling?
It was pretty traumatising for the crew as well. Not to jump on, your experience of it, but it was.
It's like having sex in front of people on camera. That's just. It's horrible, isn't it, Ben? Yeah.
When they're watching.
It's like the most alien thing you can ever do. No one, I don't know anybody who likes doing it because it just feels completely wrong and uncomfortable. Although saying all of that, but when I watched the film for the first time, and this really happens, I've never had it before, but I watched it, and there must have been about 5 or 6 moments during the film where I have no memory of shooting it. No memory whatsoever. And some of them were the darker moments, granted. So I don't know what Ben put in my coffee that morning, but it certainly worked.
For the 3 actors, congratulations for the film, by the way. For Luke, you've demonstrated a great portrayal. You're the perfect Gaston. I would like to know whether you've had to learn to sing as well, because Sienna, for example. Sienna, it's a beautiful film. Last year, you were in 2 of the most important films of the year, First Catcher and The Sharpshooter, I think she said. And we've got more of it. Is it easier for British actresses to play more interesting roles in the UK than in Hollywood? And for Tom, to ask you, the Asgard kingdom, how does it see? Is it similar to the film, to what happens in the building? You always portray roles of a villain or roles which are curious at the end of the day, at least.
Wow. That's one varied selection of questions. Did I have to learn how to sing? Is that what you asked me?
Yeah.
No. I've sung all my life. I'm Welsh. Welsh people sing. We're born singing. I spent 10 years of my career singing on stage, doing the musicals. And then I waited another 8 years to find the job which gave me the chance to bring my musical abilities to the screen. So it was one of those lucky moments, and I got the job and got to sing, and I loved every minute of it.
Is it easier to play more interesting roles in Britain? I don't know necessarily. I think it's difficult for actresses to find really great roles, and that's something which I think is being more and more exposed. No, I think there's good material everywhere if you're lucky enough to find it and become a part of it. I don't know what I'm talking about.
As far as I'm aware, there are no similarities between the Highrise and Asgard.
No, Asgard's like quite high up.
Asgard, there's a verticality, I suppose, in both places.
Yeah. Odin could be.
Oh yeah. Last time I checked, Loki lives on the top floor. Yeah. And the second part of your question, I'm always drawn to complicated people. But that's because I think people are complicated. That's just my experience of the world. I'm aware it's a very unique one, but I think people have lots of different layers. So I'm always drawn to if they are outwardly, if they have a sort of outwardly villainous aspect, I want to find their sympathetic qualities. If they are outwardly sort of likable, I want to find their flaws.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Hello.
I have a question for Tom. So, Tom, your role in the movie seems very demanding to play for an actor, both physically and mentally. So I would like to know, how did you prepare for it? Thank you.
It's an interesting... Lang is an fascinating character, I think. He's... I find him really just an interesting prospect in both the book and in Amy's screenplay because of his detachment. The Highrise is full of characters with incredible, powerful energies. They either have a charm or a charisma or like Wilder, they're a force of nature. And Lang has this almost professional detachment because he's a physiologist. And he's somebody who is he's moved into the high-rise to get away from the complexities of real life. In the book, he's described as wanting to find anonymity by moving into the gondola of a Ferris wheel suspended 300 feet above the ground. He wants a clean, light space. And in Amy's screenplay, because he's grieving. He's grieving the death of a family member, and he wants to disappear. He wears a grey suit in a grey flat in a grey sky, and he's also a doctor. So there's this detachment he has from being able to analyze the engineering of the human body, which means he's less engaged initially in the demise of the building, in the chaos. So I found that interesting, to exist in a place of detachment, somebody who understood that emotions are chemicals and hormones and parts of the engineering of a body, that he's a physiologist. You may be aware that I went to spend a day with a forensic pathologist who showed me, who basically introduced me to his work, and that was fascinating. It was fascinating listening to a professional, somebody who studies human bodies, and the way he talked about behavioral dysfunction. And his theory, as somebody who determines the cause of death in maybe 5 to 10 people every single day, is that you can't actually see, you can't see the causes of behavioral dysfunction in the brain. If you in terms of what you can physically examine, the symptoms of people who are depressed or schizophrenic, or any legitimately diagnosable diseases can't be found in the physical matter of the brain. And I said, so how do you determine these things? And he said, it's just chemicals and interpretation. And I found that fascinating as regards to where Lang comes from.
Hola, buenos días.
Hi, good morning. Congratulations to all of you for the film, and 3 questions for Tom. First of all, do you consider in your career you've done the risky roles and daring and very experimental films like this? Is it a conviction of yours, Tom, that you want to direct your film, your career along, or just the circumstances, or do you think you belong to a generation of actors that are very they can play all types of roles? And what's it like after Hallowed Crow to meet up with Jeremy Irons? And then also another curiosity is, in what academy did you learn to dance so well? Because you've danced, you've showed us your rhythm and your dancing abilities once again. And thank you very much for those 3 questions. And thank you very much for the film.
Okay, so there was, just going back, there's the dancing, and then the Hollow Crown, and before that, why these roles? Okay. I've always been drawn to unknown territory. It's very hard, I think it'd be very hard for all of us to say why we choose to do the work that we do, why we are instinctively drawn to the films that we commit to. And as an actor, I've always wanted to explore unknown territory. I feel like I'm a foreign correspondent. I like going somewhere else and scratching around and coming back. And so whenever I choose roles, I'm always drawn to challenge and to find similarities in characters who are very far away from me, and to investigate the most interesting material. That's the best way I can explain it. It's a gut feeling most of the time. It was an absolute pleasure to work with Jeremy Irons again. He and I had a great time on the Hollow Crown. And it's interesting because Lang and Royal, there's also, we played father and son in the Hollow Crown, and there is Royal elects himself to be a kind of father figure to Lang, which was an interesting sort of grace note on that relationship. And I very much enjoyed working with him. I particularly enjoyed playing squash with him. And as regards the dancing, I just don't know, I'm afraid. I didn't learn anywhere particularly, apart from a misspent youth in the 90s at random nightclubs in London. That's my best explanation for it. I may actually think that I'm significantly out-danced in this film by Luke Evans to my right. So maybe he'd like to speak about his history of dancing training.
Hot potato.
Like I said, I don't remember doing it. I have no memory of that.
Yeah.
That might be more concussion than anything.
I think the secret to the dancing in this was about...
I don't remember doing it.
Yeah. It was about lack of inhibition in the end.
It was quite good. It was the last day, wasn't it? I think where we did all that dancing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was quite giddy.
I couldn't move the following day, literally.
Cool.
So I'd like to know, the question is for Tom. I want to know what is your favorite book of ballad, except Highrise, and why?
Do you know, I'm ashamed to say I haven't read all of them. I've read some of them. The one that springs to mind is Concrete Island, which is very similar to Highrise thematically, in that he takes a character from a very civilized world and places him in a context where he has to come face to face with his more animal survival instincts. And I think Ballard is fascinated by the proximity of our inner wildness and our exterior civilization. I don't know if you know, Concrete Island is about a man who crashes on the motorway on the way out of London. And he ends up sort of stranded in this intersection, which is and the barriers are too high for him to climb out. But even if he did, it's a motorway and people are rushing past, so nobody can stop. There's a strange thing of actually being right in the middle of one of the most civilized cities in the world, in London, but actually having it feeling like a desert island. I think it's great. I think it's very similar to Highrise in lots of ways.
Esta es una pregunta para el director.
Question for the director of the film. I found common points, conceptual points with Clockwork Orange or Brazil. I'd like to know whether you've chosen, from the aesthetic side of things, certain common points of those two films that I've just mentioned in order to film the film that you've shown us, or to film to shoot this film.
Yeah, well, the reference points for the film weren't incredibly front of mind for us when we made it, and I find that in general when I make movies, we don't sit down with a mood board of loads of other movies and go, we want a bit of this, we want a bit of that, but it's more that you end up, if you approach the material that's about, it being set in the 70s already forces you into a space where those directors worked, or where Kubrick worked, or where Borman worked, or Rogue, or Russell as well. So you're kind of in that, it offers up those kind of those opportunities, and I felt like what we were trying to do in the film to a degree was to have a cultural echo rather than a kind of or a pastiche or a full-on reference. So yeah, those directors are there. They're kind of haunting the film in a way. Because it's almost, when we were making the film, I was feeling like it was a film that was stolen from the past in the same way that that we approached the book, which is a book that's written in the past about the future, and we live in the future. We've almost like time travelled ahead of the film and looking back at it, you know. So that was definitely in there. But I think it's not just the Kubrick reference. It's across all that kind of to Richardson as well, and to all those kind of and Rise and all those people like British New Wave and the wilder side of British cinema, kind of divorced away from what we're more known for, which is the kind of socio-realist side. So it's looking back at those directors to a degree, you know. But yeah, and that was my answer. Thanks.
Congratulations for the film. I would like to know whether you see it as an anti-capitalist film. Is there any anti-capitalist message in the film? And this is for the director and the actors. Talk about that crucible for change that the building reflects.
Yeah. Yeah, to a degree, yeah. I think, you know, it's all the films I've made have been a kind of reaction to the experience of living in the moment, in the now, you know. And I think that that's my favourite cinema, is always a kind of a mirror up to what's happening at this moment. And I'm kind of and that's why I was drawn to Highrise in the first place, because even though it's you know, it was written in the 70s, as we were talking about earlier, Ballard is predicting stuff well into this period and beyond. So it did feel like, as the divide between you know, people who've got money and people who haven't got money seems to be becoming a yawning chasm, it felt like the right movie to make at this point.
In terms of the Crucible for Change line, I think, I said this before, but I think Ballard could see coming around the corner our obsession with technology. And all the inhabitants of the high-rise mistakenly believe, well, mistakenly is up to your interpretation, but the inhabitants of the high-rise believe that the building can replace the needs of the natural world. That there will be no need to leave the building. The building will furnish all your needs: food, drink, sex, appetite, and that you won't ever have to leave. There's supermarkets, there's swimming pools, there's gyms, and it's somehow a warning about our obsession with technology. I've mentioned it before, but there's an extraordinary interview that he gave in 1978 to a reporter called John Savage, where he talks about the marriage of human psychology and technology, and how the advances in technology and our obsession with it are going to actually shift the patterns of our thought and behavior in an irrevocable way. And I think the high rise for him was an experiment with that somehow we're outsourcing our needs and replacing the natural world. And what you see is what happens when you do that.
Hi, Ben. Your film is a film, doesn't leave anybody indifferent. It leaves the audience uncomfortable. It reminded me of the Lord of the Flies, the final chaos between both groups of boys. And I would like to ask you another phrase that I heard when Jeremiah Irons said, we act by hiding. Oh, when he says you can hide it all under the carpet. And do you like these types, Tom, carrying out these types of characters, or more historical like Henry IV by Shakespeare? Or do you prefer these types of characters? And that was a question for Tom, sorry. The second one.
What was the first part?
No, it...
Well, I suppose, yes. It always, when I read the script, it felt like Lord of the Flies in a way. The high rise is the island, and the inhabitants are. There's a similar strain of both writers, J.G. Ballard and Amy Jump, examining what happens to the manners of civilized people when placed in a very extreme situation. So who are we in extremity? It's interesting you mentioned it, because when I was talking about Concrete Island, I think one of Ballard's favourite novels was Robinson Crusoe. So I think he always wanted to see people pushed to their physical and psychological limit to then see who they might become and how they might behave. And I've always thought it was wedded to his own childhood experiences in Shanghai, which he talks about in Miracles of Life, which is an account of his childhood, which is towards the end of the war, where he sees a degree of extremity. He sees extreme violence, he sees extreme appetite, and I think that had a lasting and formative effect on his imagination. And do I prefer these types of... I mean, it's the duty of an actor to live in the shoes of somebody else for a short time and to bring all of your physical and intellectual commitment to bear on representing their truth. And I find, as I said before, I find complex people interesting. Prince Hal and Henry V is an interesting man, full of doubt and responsibility, and within him there is expressed a struggle to be free and become his own man, but also the responsibility of living up to his public reputation. And I think it's something that we can all relate to, even if we're not in his position. I think the same is true of... Essentially, the interesting thing about acting is excavating identity between exterior and interior life. So we all present something to the world, but we feel things on the inside. And in performance, I think you can start to blur that line. And I guess, so in a way, it doesn't feel like the two projects are different. It's all an exploration of human nature without judgment and with compassion.
Good morning. Congratulations for the film. My question is for the producer. So, because I don't see anybody ask you a question. So, no, but really my interest is to know how was the develop of the production of the film, and where you get more problems or moments where you feel like,
Well, this is quite a long film for me to develop. In fact, it started in the late 70s with Nicholas Roeg. It was a moment, but it didn't happen because we couldn't persuade. Paul Marsberg was going to write the script, and we couldn't persuade the rights. I couldn't get the rights, but I liked the book, and then later made Crash because I like Ballard's books, and I'm a producer who follows things that he likes more than the market. I'm not interested in the market much. So I did. There were many actually other people involved. I haven't mentioned the names, and nobody knows, and I don't really like to go over the past. But one day, Ben Wheatley approached his agent, well, my son, who was friendly with his agent, approached me. And rather like when I met David Cronenberg to do Naked Lunch, suddenly it all became right. This is right. I see it. I mean, I can see the movie. So I'd seen Ben's other film, well, one other film of his, and read a lot about him. And so when I got that, it was immediate, yeah. I want to meet him immediately because maybe he'll find a way to realize this film for me in the right way. So I met Ben, and he said, I want to adapt it in another way. And I immediately, yeah, you're right. I've been going the wrong way. And that's what happened with this film. It was sort of a 15-year journey, I suppose, or more. So I do that sometimes with films, and I stay with them because I like them. And it's difficult making films like this because people are making things that are sort of unusual and rare. It's more difficult than making popular things. Not that this film won't be popular, but it's not instantly seen as regular entertainment. But it is very entertaining for me.
Buenos días.
Hi, good morning. Congratulations for the film, because apart from the references that it's a novel type film, and congratulations all of the characters, all of the actors, because you portrayed excellent roles. The director, please, did you, albeit it's a novel, a film like a sci-fi film of the home sweet home, where one goes home to feel, and everything turns into a tragedy. And the Hollywood cinema, Siena, Franco Tirador, which is the sharpshooter, where you carry out the characters. This is what young American actresses, you play a role that ends up being a courageous mother. So we're going back to the most traditional type of characters. Do you feel manipulated by Hollywood cinema because of the roles that you play there? That question was for Sienna, by the way, after the question for Ben. Okay, did you have the volume on? Yes? Yes, he's referring... No, let me just recap. Can I recap on that? He's asking whether you feel manipulated by the roles that you play by Hollywood because of the fact that you play a woman's role, but you end up being a hero, or heroine in this case, but it ends up being a mother, and so on and so forth. Do you feel... Well, that's what he asked. I'm sorry.
I don't understand. Does anyone understand? I don't feel manipulated. I don't understand. I mean, in American Sniper, which I love, it's called Sharpshooter here. I didn't know that. It was called American Sniper to me, but it was a real person. I don't feel manipulated because I was playing somebody who exists and portraying real events that happened.
But it's different stories for... there's space for all types of cinema. I don't think it's necessary that one type of cinema trumps another type. I mean, for me, my own personal taste is cinema is a very, very broad church. And you can have like tentpole movies and big Hollywood movies, and they can exist side by side with art house films, and you can watch both those types of films without irony, I think. But I never see it as a combative thing. It's not one cinema versus another. It's you can find pleasure in all types, I think. What was my question? I missed the beginning of that one.
I don't.
No, whether you've tried to make a type of sci-fi, a critique upon the Home Sweet Home, a critique on Home Sweet Home, because it seems like it's a film, like a sci-fi film about Home Sweet Home. The future of the home is not going to be Home Sweet Home. Is that that's what I think you've done? Was that?
Yeah, to a degree. I think it's more like it's it's the arrogance of people, isn't it? That if you can construct a beautiful box for yourself and separate yourself away from the poor, that everything's going to be okay, and it's kind of not, And I think that. Also, I'm a massive pessimist, so I don't really buy into Home Sweet Home ever, And as you can see from the films I've made, I mean, this is a bit more of a cheery ending as far as I'm concerned. If you look at the other movies, so yeah.
Okay, so we have to leave it here. Thank you very much. Tenemos que terminar aquí.
That's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.